Welcome to the stream. Today I'm going to be reading a book called Gastrophysics. It's going to do that while I'm drinking my tea. I've been reading this book and I want to read more of it and write more notes. But my time has been a bit constrained. So I've been scheduling things out, learning how to schedule things out. I mentioned before working with goals, so I've been working with scheduling as a part of that. And well, it just fits in the schedule to read while I'm drinking tea, and of course, streaming while I'm drinking tea. So, reading while I'm streaming, it all works together. So, I'm going to read this book, I'm going to take some notes, and we're going to learn together. Today, specifically about sight, different ways that sight can affect taste. That's what we're reading about. You know, some of these things could be helpful for a stream. Learn some things about how to create a visual ambiance that's pleasant. And then anybody who drinks tea along with me will have a nice experience to go along with that. Haven't quite figured out the logistics yet, but I have a book over here. Book's right here. I'll be reading this book. I've got tea stuff right here. So my teaware is gonna have to move. Luckily, I've got a nice little placemat that makes it easy to move. And then I've got a keyboard, which is over here, a little bit off camera. And so I'm gonna have to figure out how to move these things into the right place as I'm drinking. Haven't figured it out yet. But the logistics will fall in place. Perhaps. For this particular stream today, I will not be sharing my notes. Well, I won't be showing my notes as I'm making them. I might share them later. I'm sure I will share them later, but just not while I'm making the notes. All right, let's jump into it. Can you taste the plate? It's the subchapter heading. Most people will shake their heads when you ask them whether changing the color of a plate will influence the taste of the food in it. However, research conducted together with the Alicia Foundation in Spain, exactly research conducted together. Exactly the same frozen strawberry mousse was rated as tasting 10% sweeter and 15% more flavorful and was liked significantly more when eaten from a white plate rather than from a black plate. And there's a picture of it, but you won't be able to see it, and it won't be in good quality. But whatever. Remarkably, follow-up research by scientists working in Greenland obtained even more striking results by varying both the color and shape of the plate. Strange though it may seem, round plates are just sweeter than angular plates. So a round and white plate will be making your food taste more sweet. And this is the portion where I'm writing notes. Uh, so this is interesting to myself because I often use, I don't have my trays with me. I often use a rectangular tray. I have two trays that I use most often. I have a rectangular tray that I use, which is a light brown. And then I have a round tray that I use, which is a dark brown color. I'm talking about for my tea. And I'm wondering if that counts. Okay, the logistics here again of the keyboard. I'm just gonna put my keyboard on top of my book. It'll work today. So for plates, lighter color plates. Hmm. There must be some way I can arrange my computer, desktop, or my screen to show all the things I want to see all at once. Wow, there it is. Okay. In other research, we have been able to modify the taste of everything from a Vinted cup of hot chocolate to a cafe latte by varying the color of the cup. Hot chocolate tastes more well chocolatey and is liked significantly more when served from an orange plastic cup rather than a white plastic cup. That's bizarre. What does orange have to do with chocolatey? Orange. Unfortunately, this book doesn't have like a systematic layout of all the things that it's telling me, because I would like to just have a list of all the colors of plates that would be associated with whatever tastes, and then a list of all the colors of cups that would be associated with whatever tastes. We don't have that. Meanwhile, cafe latte is judged more intense while the sweetness is somewhat suppressed when served in a white porcelain rather than a clear glass. Coffee latte is judged as more intense and the sweetness is suppressed when served in white porcelain, but it will be less intense and more sweet when in a glass mug. Okay, this is complicated because it doesn't seem to be an easy porting from plate to cup, and it also doesn't, it may not be the same for every type of liquid. Beverage may not be the same for every type of beverage. White porcelain. So again, this relevant to me. I just drink from a glass cup. I've got glass cups. The glass cup made my drink less intense but more sweet. Would I want that? Probably not actually. I think I would want more intense, usually. But in any case, I may be able to shape some of the experience of my tea. Intriguingly, gastrophysics research also shows that enhancing the visual contrast on the plate can lead to a substantial increase in the food and liquid intake in those suffering from advanced Alzheimer's disease. That's so specific. These scientists are so bizarre. All right, I'm reading a book. It's called Gastrophysics. I don't know if I've mentioned that. It's called Gastrophysics, and it's just a person talking about different studies. He's not citing the studies directly in the text, Maybe he does in an index or something. I don't know. This is a bizarre study, specifically for Alzheimer's disease, people who are suffering from advanced Alzheimer's disease. Higher contrast leads to more food intake. Now, how does that translate to anybody else in the world? I don't know. One study conducted at a long-term care facility in the US, for instance, switching to high contrast colored plates and glasses led to a 25% increase in food consumption and liquid intake going up by as much as 84%. The result of another hospital study were equally dramatic. The average consumption among the older and more vulnerable patients, included those suffering from dementia, went up by 30% just by changing the color of the plate. So impressed they were with the results, in this case, that the hospital went on to replace their standard issue white plates with blue cockery. I don't know what a cockery plate is, but high contrast. I'm gonna write. I gotta write all the information here. High contrast plates and cups, leading to more consumption, but only in specifically for advanced Alzheimer's. Patients. But hold a minute. I hear some of you say, oh, I'm saying it. There's something that doesn't quite make sense here. What about the blue plate special? As the wonderfully named Buddy Crumpacker put in her book, The Sex Life of Food, the term blue plate special became popular during the Great Depression because restaurant owners found that diners were satisfied with smaller portions of food if it was served on blue plates. Okay, that's not what I was asking. I don't know who would be thinking this. So, how can it be that blue plates reduced consumption back in the 30s, but significantly increase how patients eat today? Well, the blue plate special was for general population, but we're talking about for Alzheimer's patients. I don't know, Mr. Scientist. One explanation might be that the majority of the food served in hospitals tends to be bland in both taste and color, so it simply fails to stand against a white plate. By contrast, boom boom, served on a blue plate, it suddenly is much easier to see what one is eating. This is precisely why at home I used to like serving on my signature Thai green chicken curry, greenish white in color, with white rice on a black plate. The visual contrast was much more striking. Or as one article I read put it, serving steak on a white plate is fine, but porridge should never be. Though, sadly, the delightful Mrs. Spence, that's the author's wife, isn't of the same opinion. She thought the angular black plates were a little too bachelor-ish, so they went out. So much for gastrophysics. This guy is a research scientist on food and likes his food in a particular way and allows his wife to throw out his plates. That's messed up. Then he writes about it in the book like it's funny. Even to a non-gastrophysicist, presenting hospital food on a red plate or tray must seem intuitively wrong. There is justification for this approach, of course. It is supposed to help the relevant healthcare professionals more easily identify those patients needing special nutritional attention. I suspect that it is a bad idea, though. Why? Well, because the color red tends to elicit avoidance motivation. What this means in practice is that people eat significantly less when served on a red plate than when offered the exact same food on plateware of a different color, and the effects aren't small either. Okay. Red plates trigger avoidance. What about that? In one study, people consume, again, notice how he's not telling you the studies. It's bizarre to not say the name of the studies. Okay. There is a bibliography at the end with all of the things cited. Presumably all the things. It looks like all of them. In one study, people consumed almost twice as many pretzels under lab conditions when they ate from a white plate than from a red plate. Twice as many. There seems no good reason to imagine that serving food on a red tray rather than from a tray of a different color wouldn't trigger exactly the same kind of avoidance motivation. So, so red plates and trays might be recommended for anyone who wishes to lose weight, but this simply is not the situation that most hospital patients find themselves in. And why would he make that jump between plates and trays? We haven't made this connection of them being the same. So while you can't literally taste the plateware on which food is served, its color, not to mention its size, is likely to modify your behavior. Perhaps it might bias you to eat more or less than you otherwise might have done. What is more, it is likely to influence your experience of whatever is served, possibly making it seem more delicious, sweeter, or more flavorful. I also wonder what the effect of not having a plate would be, or serving in some other manner. I guess directly onto a table, or on the ground, or in a bag, or just given by hand. The effect of background color on taste and perception of flavor causes all manner of problems for the food and beverage industry, as a number of companies have found to their cost. Simply altering the can color, say adding a little bit more yellow of this on the side of 7 Up, which was done in the 50s, or launching a white Christmas Coke can, which happened in 2011, can change what consumers think about the taste. Of course, modifying the color of the packaging shouldn't affect the taste of the contents, especially for a brand that people already are familiar with. People might think. I think he's just voicing the opinion of people who might think this. And yet the evidence suggests that it most certainly does. The phenomena provides an example of visual dominance, sensory dominance of the visuals of the packaging color, which may in fact be the only product relevant sensory cue that a consumer has to go on before they start drinking directly from a can. Now, he doesn't actually say what any of the changes are, he just says that there are changes. It's just reinforcing all the stuff he's been saying before. Now take a look at the plate shown in figure 3.3. Here's the plate. Can you see that plate? Oh yeah, look at that. You can see that plate. It's, I'm thinking it's a light color plate. It seems like it's got really high sides, and It's got this like rounded splash, rounded edges. It looks like if you were to drop a ball into a bowl of milk or something like that, the way that it might splash. Take a look at the plate shown in figure 3.3. What do you think serving dinner from such an odd bit of plateware would do to the experience? Given the emerging gastrophysics research, no one should be surprised by the explosion of interest in enhancing people's enjoyment of food by breaking away from the rigid tyranny of large, round, white plates, what some refer to as the American plate. Ah, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Are large, round, white plates not common in other parts of the world? No matter whether you are a diner or a chef, you can benefit from paying a little more attention to the latest gastrophysics research and to the plateware itself, not just what's on it. I should mention the word gastrophysics. It means gastronomy, which is the study of food, I think, or what you're eating. I don't know. Gastronomy, something to do with food. And physics is in reference to psychophysics, which I also don't know what that means, but it means something different from physics. I'm fairly sure psychophysics has to do with the senses or the sensory apparatus of people, but that's just me thinking. But you know, I may have written this down in my notes. I got notes. Let's look it up. Psychophysics, the study of perception. Scientific study that factors the influence of our multisensory experience while tasting food and drink. That's what gastrophysics would be. Multisensory experiences. I remember there being something weird about multisensory. Okay, multisensory is when multiple senses are integrated into a single experience. But then you also have something separate, which is called cross-modal experiences. This is when the senses affect what we experience. One sense affects what we experience in a different sense, or senses affect each other. An integrated experience is a multisensory, but a cross-modal is when one sense affects the other sense. So what we're describing here of the plate changing the way that you taste or changing your behavior, this is cross-modal. Because you would expect, I don't know what that would be cross-modal. What? The visual sense is affecting the taste sense, yes, for, in particular, the sweetness one. If you have a round white plate, things taste more sweet. That is a cross-modal effect. And I'm sure we'll find a multisensory effect at some other point, where multiple senses are integrated into a singular experience. I guess just eating in general will be considered something like that. Because you're eating, you've got the taste perception, you've got the aroma perception, and then you've got all of these tactile feelings in the mouth, plus some of the pain receptors going off with the trigeminal effect. You've got your humidity receptors flashing. That would be a multi-sensory experience because you're just tasting something. You experience it as just tasting something, but it's mostly, and it's more of a fully integrated, multiple things at the same time. All right, where's that? It used to be that only the world's top restaurants served each dishes on their multi-course tasting menus from dedicated plateware, but this is now slowly percolating, Percolating. Oh, percolating. This is now, let me read this whole sentence again. It used to be that only the world's top restaurants served each of the dishes on a multi-course tasting menus from dedicated plateware, but this is now slowly percolating down through the chain restaurants all the way down to the adventurous home chef. We are reaching, are we reaching the point where the fact that a dish looks good or photographs well is becoming more important to its success than how it tastes? Question. This growing trend towards gastroporn has been parodied by Canadian chef Carol Flynn, aka Jacques Lemerde. Jacques Lemerde has an Instagram site with over 100,000 followers, which shows food picked up from convenience stores or fast food restaurants, meaning junk food, like crumbled Oreos and Doritos, plated to look like it came from a Michelin-starred restaurant. I'm going to look up this person because I've never heard of her before. Jacques Lemerde. I guess I could probably show. Oh, it does look good. This is John. Oh, that's a Pop Tart. Huh. These are some old pictures from like I don't know 8 years ago or something. But they look great. I recommend you look that up. I don't have the capacity to show. I don't want to figure out how to show all this on stream right now today at this very moment. But it does look really cool. Highly recommend it. Look it up. Jacques, like Jacques, that's the spelling of the name. Jacques, and then La Merde, LA, and then Merde. And she's got like Pop Tarts and Doritos and Oreos plated in really cool ways. Plated means that it's arranged on the plate and then a cool picture is taken of it. Ideally, of course, you want both. Doesn't everybody want their food that not only looks beautiful but also tastes great? Doesn't everybody want that? No, I don't think everybody wants that, but I'm sure that the author does. There are a couple of important challenges here for the gastrophysics physicist. One is to develop robust experimental tests to assess the impact of changes in plating on people's perception and how much they will be willing to pay. But the gastrophysicist can also provide theoretical insights into the aesthetics of plating, not just analyzing what chefs have done to see what people like and make predictions and recommendations about the sort of configurations that the diner ought to like based on what we already know about the brain. So you predict what they'll like based on what we know about the brain. You predict what they like. Okay. So you want to make some predictions. It's science. Taken together, these will hopefully enable those who are preparing really great tasting food to come up with plating arrangements that have the maximum visual appeal as well. Delivering on that promise is easier when the chef combines their skills in the kitchen with the latest gastrophysics testing techniques and insights. Okay, that is the end of that subchapter. Chapter. I think it's called a subchapter. My notes are pretty scattered in this subchapter because we didn't get a lot of information that was clear or clearly organized, rather. So I'm going to give that a shot to try to organize these things. Something about plates, white plates. White plates leading to more sweetness, in particular with strawberry mousse, 10% more sweet. Round white plates do even more. And then he mentioned that for some reason he might just assume that a white plate and a tray at a hospital would would be the same. Not that a white plate, but a tray and a plate would be interpreted in the same way and have a similar or the same effect. No science behind that, just an assumption. No experiment even suggested, just the assumption. Well, anyway, I have the assumption too. And I'm wondering how that will work with tea. I drink tea. If I had a tray that was round and white, would that make my tea taste more sweet? I don't know. Something I could test. I could just get myself a plate. And then cups. Somehow having high contrast, another thing he said, high contrast led to more consumption. And do I want more consumption? Maybe. I'm going to write these notes. That's what I want to do. Don't know how to write these notes. The notes are not very well organized. The information was not very well organized. Round plates are sweet. Orange makes hot chocolate more chocolatey. Orange cups makes hot chocolate more chocolatey. Cafe latte. Is that how I pronounce that? I don't know. Cafe latte is more intense and less sweet in a white porcelain cup, but less intense and more sweet in a glass mug. High contrast plates lead to more consumption for Alzheimer's patients and people with dementia. Red plates trigger avoidance. And then the can color of Coca-Cola led to something changing. Didn't say what. Same with 7-Up. Something changed. Don't know what. I'm going to leave it unstructured because there doesn't seem to be a very clear way to organize that information for me. I'm drinking a tea right now. It tastes really, it's a bit like cherry. It tastes very medicinal. Licorice, cherry. It's cooling in the mouth a bit. It's an aged pour. It's very smooth. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Next sub chapter. When did food porn first appear and where is it heading? People have been preparing beautiful looking foods for feasts and celebrations for centuries. And of course, artists have for centuries captured them in all forms of still life paintings. However, one second. Do you think that people who did still life paintings were capturing actual food? Like they like made a made a made a meal, arranged it on a table, sat down and painted it as it was on the table? I mean, I guess it's possible. It's not how I imagined it to go. I mean, it makes a certain type of sense, but also wouldn't the food just kind of degrade over? It takes a while to paint, usually. Maybe you can just quickly sketch and then paint later. I don't know. However, any other for anything other than an extravagant feast, the likelihood that the meal in the past would have been served without any real concern for how they looked. It made sense to me. I understood what I said, but I don't know if I said it correctly. However, for anything other than an extravagant feast, the likelihood is that meals in the past would have been served without any real concern for how they looked. That they taste good, or even just that they provided some sustenance, is all that mattered. Now that this was true even of the famous French chefs, as highlighted by the following quote from Sebastien Lapenoy, executive chef at Latière de Joe Robinson, describing the state of affairs before the emergence of the Nouvelle Cuisine. French presentation was virtually non-existent. If you ordered a coq au vin at a restaurant, it would have been served just as if you had made it at home. The dishes were what they were. Presentation was very basic. This is what happened before Nouvelle Cuisine. I think that just means new cuisine. Is cuisine a French word also? New food. I don't know. Everything changed, though, when the East met the West in the kitchen of the French cookery schools in the 1960s. This was a meeting of the culinary minds which led to Nouvelle Cuisine and, with it, gastroporn. The later term, the latter term dates back to a witty review written in 1977 describing Paul Bocuse French Cookery Cookbook as a costly $20 exercise in gastroporn. The term stuck and has now made its way into Collins' English Dictionary, which defines it as the representation of food in a highly sensual manner. Others prefer the term food porn. Make no mistake, though, that they are talking about the same thing. These days, more and more chefs are becoming concerned, obsessed even, by how their food photographs. And not only the glorious full color, full page pictures that will adorn the pages of their next glossy cookbook, as one restaurant consultant put it, I'm sure some restaurants are preparing food now that is going to look good on Instagram. Certainly, chefs who serve something visually stunning and plate it beautifully, or else plate it on or in something most unusual, like a brick or a towel or flat cap, can give their dishes some real eye appeal, and hence hopefully help grow their digital presence. There's a cool picture here. I don't see, oh, it's referenced there. Okay. I'll show you in a bit when it's referenced. Some chefs have been struggling with how to deal with the growing trend for dishes to be photographed, for diners to be. Some, I'm going to retake this one. Some chefs have been struggling with how to deal with the growing trend for diners to photograph their food and share it on social media. Their much publicized responses include everything from limiting their diners' opportunities to photograph the food during the meal, though, through to banning photography inside the establishments they preside over completely. I have personally been chastised for taking pictures of food in some restaurants. The latter approach seems doomed to failure, for you can't fight the tides of change. Millennials are too strong, okay? Best to get with the program and figure out how to adapt your food offering to the growing number of experience-hungry millennials out there who want to share their every waking moment to their social networks. It would, however, seem as though the chefs have now mostly embraced the trend, acknowledging that is all a part of the experience. As Alain Ducasse, chef at London's three Michelin-starred Dorchester Hotel, says, cuisine is a feast for the eyes, and I understand that our guests wish to share these instants of emotion through social media. Alain Ducasse, I think he's a famous chef, like a like a like he has like a TV show. Anyway, uh, wish to share these instants of emotion. The pictures of food as an instance of emotion. When thinking of a more constructive approach to resolving the looming technology-driven crisis in high-end cuisine, just consider these cutting-edge restaurants now have started to incorporate specialty-shaped plates into their service in order to provide the perfect backdrop for their food in their diners' photos. Is it really just for photos? Others, like foodography at Katit, Others, like Foodography at Katit, a restaurant in Tel Aviv, Israel, offer their diners camera stands on the table. Oh, they give them camera stands, or else serve their food on plates that spin 360 degrees, thus promising their customers the perfect shot. And then this is where we get the cool image. Oh, I see what's happening here. Okay. Foodography, it's all about getting the perfect shot. The curved plate and smartphone stand make taking a great photo a cinch. Is that how you spell cinch? Anyway, here's a picture that I thought was pretty cool. And it turns out that that's not food, that's a phone on a plate. You see it? See it there? It's a phone. Spinning plates might well strike you as a bit over the top. It doesn't. But then again, haven't we all subtly, almost unconsciously rotated the plate once or twice after the waiter has placed the dish in front of us at a restaurant? I don't know if I've subconsciously done that. It was subconscious. Have a look at the two plates shown in figure 3.5 and tell me which one you prefer. What do you prefer, left or right? Here. You see it? This here. Was I having? Okay, here. Which one? Left or right? Um, I don't have an obvious. I can't tell. Maybe left. Left has a slightly more symmetrical, but it's like it's so slight. There we go. Slightly more symmetrical. I can't tell. I don't have a preference between these two. They look fine. Okay. Have a look at the plates. Which one would you prefer, the left or the right one? Yet, all that differs is the orientation. It doesn't tell me which one. Our latest online research shows that Our latest online research shows that people's preference of the plate of food can vary quite dramatically simply as a function of the orientation in which it is presented. It doesn't. It doesn't tell me which one. That's interesting. Which one do people prefer? I don't know. I'm gonna read the figure. What do you call the figure? The description of the figure. I don't know. Some plate of food served two ways. Several thousand people have been spinning this particular plate of the signature dish from the Brazilian chef Albert Landgraf into the perfect orientation over the internet, a massive citizen science experiment. Citizen science, citizen science experiment. Based on the results, we now know that a majority of people prefer the plate on the left. There you go. Ideally, the onus should be plated. Onions. Oh, these are onions. Ideally, the onions should be plated so that their tips point 3.4 degrees past 12 o'clock. Based on some citizen science, we've determined that the onion should be placed so that the tip is pointing 3.4 degrees off 12 o'clock. The chef had decided to plate it at 12 o'clock. So the chef intuitively got it more or less spot on. That's not more or less, but this 3.4 degrees. That's major. No need for the gastrophysicist other than for confirmation in this case. If I were a chef, I'd resent that. Need somebody to confirm my findings. I found it. Okay. So people on the left preferred the one on the left. That's the one I identified also. It seemed slightly more symmetrical having the point going upwards. Okay. In our online experiments, for instance, we find that people are willing to pay significantly more for exactly the same food when it is shown in one orientation compared to another. Now that you know this, don't you want to optimize the orientation of the plate every time you serve food? No, no, I don't. No, no, I don't. No, no, I don't. It's trying to incept me. No, that is not how I feel currently. But I would like to optimize it sometimes. All right, some of the times. All right, some of the time. You got me. Some of the times. If such a simple step can genuinely enhance the perceived value and enjoyment of food you serve, no matter who you are and no matter whom you are serving, you'd be crazy not to. Well, that's not true. That's not true. You're not a crazy person if you don't want to optimize for the orientation of your plates. It's okay if you don't want to orient. Beyond that, there is a sense in which the visual appeal of the meal has become an end in itself, with a growing number of people taking images of what they eat. Oh, actually, most of this chapter has not been noteworthy, but the orientation thing is kind of important. So I will take a note. It's interesting that the food orientation thing he had mentioned nothing about how much it changes taste, nor if it changed the amount of food that people ate, but only that it changed how much people are willing to pay. And then he just called people crazy for not caring about it. Why? I don't understand. Um, well, there are things I don't like. There are a lot of books I read where a large part of the book is trying to convince you to care about the thing that the book is talking about. But for me, maybe I'm an outlier here. I like to read books that I already care about. I'm reading this book because I want to learn about the stuff that I'm learning about in the book. I don't want to be told that I'm crazy for not caring about the things that I'm learning in the book. I'm not trying to be motivated to learn the things that I'm learning in the book. I picked up the book because I want to read the things and learn the things from the book about the book subject in the book. I don't want to be reading the book to be chastising other people who don't care about the things that are in the book. Does that make sense? That to me is annoying. But I'm sure there are a lot of people who read books and need the motivation to care about the things that are in the book that they're reading. I'm sure it has some effect on the behavior of all people, including myself. Perhaps chastising everybody else who doesn't read the book and doesn't care about the subject makes people, including myself, more likely to read more of the book, but it also makes me annoyed. Beyond that, there is a sense in which the visual appeal of the meal has become an in and of itself, with a growing number of people taking images of what they eat. Oh, did I read this whole thing? I did. No, I didn't. Certainly these days, the press is full of tips on how to make your food photography more visually attractive. The press is full of tips of how to make your food photography more visually attractive, offering, as one newspaper did recently, to help you turn your dull food images into Instagram food porn in 12 simple steps. This book was written in 2017, or at least released in 2017, or at least copyrighted in 2017. I don't know, maybe not released at the same time. Uh, oh, people read newspapers, and newspapers talk about Instagram. That's just bizarre to me. I don't know anything about newspapers. Okay. Researchers and food companies have in recent years begun to establish which tricks and techniques works best in terms of increasing the eye appeal of a dish, including, for instance, showing food and especially protein in motion, even if it just implied motion, to attract the viewer's attention and convey notions of freshness. It's funny to me that protein being in motion indicates freshness. I mean, why would it kind of makes sense that you've got a steak that's moving, it's fresh, but that's also pretty alarming to some people. I guess it'd be a bit off-putting. If you're just like, I just killed the cow in the back, that that's funny to me. I don't know. It works apparently. That's kind of weird though. You ever see that there's sometimes if you like butcher a cow very like soon, if you kill a cow, cut them up, get the muscles going, and then you like throw salt on the muscles, it'll start to spasm because of, I don't know why, but the nerve endings are still active in the muscle, and having the salt triggers some of the nerve endings and makes the steak spasm. I'm calling it a steak. I don't think it cut. I don't know if you cut it down to a steak at that point. Anyway, you get the picture. You gotta kill a cow, cut off a slab of meat, throw some salt on it. It'll start to spasm. I wonder if people would like that as food, food porn. It'd be interesting to see. I don't know if I'd want to eat it. I definitely want to eat it. I don't know if I'd think it was appetizing, but I'd want to try it. I'm just adventurous. I'd want to try something like that. But definitely conveys fresh. All right. The gastrophysicist knows only too well how important this is. A beautifully plated dish is likely to taste better than it might if the elements were randomly plonked on the plate. At the same time, I and many of my colleagues who work as chefs worry that this increase in eye appeal sometimes comes at the cost of the optimization of the actual flavor of the dish. It's interesting that he calls it the actual flavor because this whole book is talking about how all the senses integrate into flavor itself. So I wonder what he means by actual flavor in this particular sentence. Bit of a Freudian slip going against the entire thesis of the book. I'm also wondering about the octopus. This is a separate last topic that we talked about. The octopus, you've seen the Japanese food where you have the octopus that kind of moves around. I don't know if it's actually alive or if it's the same type of thing. You just add salt to it and it moves, spasms. But the octopus dish. Where it's in motion because it's fresh. I don't think that attracts a lot of people. I think it off-puts more people than it attracts. So it's kind of curious to me that the notion of protein in motion attracts people. How would you have implied motion of a steak or of a chicken breast or chicken thigh or of a quail leg? I don't know. Anything. How do you imply motion? It said the sense of motion or motion helps with the appeal even if it's implied motion. That was the end of that last chapter, the undercutting of his entire thesis of the book. Eye appeal comes at the cost of the optimization of actual flavor being the thing that undercuts the book. Next chapter, subchapter. Have you heard of yolk porn? So instead of gastro porn or food porn, specifically yolk, like egg yolk. What do you get if you show protein oozing egg yolk in motion? The answer is yolk porn. I was just thinking about quail eggs, huh? Seriously, this is an all new trend in the addictive food images. Again, I feel like I read that sentence wrong, but we're just going to go past it. That is the figure that it wants us to show at this moment. I feel like my lighting is... Okay, here we go. Look at that. That's a yolk. Something's being dipped into it. Can't tell what. Toaster soldier being harmlessly dipped into an egg yolk. Do you think, or something rather more pernicious? Just a toast soldier. Soldier? I feel like I don't know what that word is. Okay. I said soldier at first, and it is that word. But a toast soldier is something different than a soldier. Is it pronounced the same way? So a toast soldier is a strip of toast. I'm going to ask ChatGPT. I know what a soldier is. I know what toast is. But what is a toast soldier, and how do you pronounce that word?
A toast soldier is a British breakfast food. Basically, thin strips of toast, perfect for dipping into soft boiled eggs. The word soldier in this context is pronounced just like the military term soldier. It's a fun and tasty way to enjoy eggs and toast.
Got it. Toast soldier. Confusing to me to read that word in that context. Okay, toast soldier. I came across an example recently in a London Underground station. There were a whole host of video advertising screens along the wall, and as I ascended the escalator. As I could see, all I could see out of the corner of my eye was a steaming slice of lasagna being lifted slowly from a dish, dripping with hot melted cheese on screen after screen. That's sensual. As the marketers know only too well, such protein in motion shots are very attention grabbing, and our eyes, rather our brains, find them most irresistible. Does cheese count as protein? Cheese count as protein in motion? Images of food, or more specifically, energy-dense food, capture our visual awareness as does anything that moves. So that's the multisensory thing there, huh? The sense of motion and the awareness of food at the same time, visual. Protein in motion is therefore precisely the kind of energetic food stimulus that our brains have evolved to detect, track, and concentrate on visually. Our brains have evolved to detect cheese drippy. The British retailer Marks and Spencer have acquired something of a reputation for their food porn, which much of their advertising over the last decade or so including highly stylized and gorgeously presented visual imagery. Look closer at their ads and one finds plenty of protein in motion, both implied motion and real motion. Their most famous ad from 2005, 2005 was for a chocolate pudding shown with the extravagant melting center. A sultry voiceover came out with the iconic, though subsequently much parodied line, "There is not just chocolate pudding. This is a Marks and Spencer chocolate pudding." But do you have any idea what this one ad did to its sales? They skyrocketed by about 3,500%. What was especially noticeable about Marks and Spencer's 2014 campaign, which paid homage to the original gooey pudding, was that all of the food shown was shown in motion. In fact, one of the most widely commented on images was of a Scottish egg being sliced in half with the yolk oozing out slowly. According to one company executive, the ad showcased the sensual and surprising aspects of food, like its textures and movements, in a modern and stylish and precise format. And Marks and Spencer's certainly aren't the only ones who have adopted this approach. An informal analysis of food commercials shown in the highly valued advertising slots during the US Super Bowl revealed that in the years 2012 through 2014, two-thirds shown food in motion. Two-thirds of Super Bowl ads about food showed the food in motion. Food commercials shown in the highly, yes, of food commercials. Two-thirds of food commercials during the Super Bowl were food in motion. The attraction that we feel towards images of food in motion might also help to explain the viral explosion of interest with one particular video of a melting chocolate dessert that swept the internet recently, described by a number of journalists as simply hypnotic. Recently being in 2017. Doesn't say the date but that was when the book was published. Or copywritten. I don't know if there's a difference. One other reason to show food in motion, real or implied motion, is that it looks more desirable, in part because it is perceived to be fresher. I said that before, saying it again. Actually, he said before, specifically protein in motion made it seem fresher, but now all food in motion seems to be fresher. For instance, food psychology and marketing researcher Brian Wansink and his colleagues at Cornell University conducted research showing that we rate a picture of a glass of orange juice as looking significantly more appealing when the juice can be seen poured into the glass and when the image of the glass has already been filled. Both are static images, but one implies emotion. That was enough to increase the product's appeal. For those of you at home who may or may not be able to guarantee that your food moves, another strategy is simply to leave the leaves or stem of a fruit to help cue freshness. Okay. It's the end of that subchapter. I'm going to do some writing. The notes here are important to write. That's not true. I just want to write the notes. Okay. We're in the subchapter of yolk porn. Maybe I should just write food porn. All food in motion indicates freshness and is more appealing. Notice how there are no scientific studies in this subchapter, but there was an informal analysis of Super Bowl foods. Motion can be real. So implied motion just means, in this case, a picture of something that would be in motion. So you have a picture of a hamburger in flight, with the things slightly separated, all the bread separated from the patty, separated from. I'm not going to describe all the portions of a hamburger, but you get the picture. A static picture of that would be implied motion. How can I take photos of tea in motion? I don't know. And then finally, last thing I want to write is that the stems of fruit imply freshness. And again, that just does, he just writes this, he's writing this in a parenthetical. No mention of study, no mention of experiment, no mention of his own personal experience. Just says it. Okay. On to the next sub-chapter. The mukbang. Now let me tell you, dear reader, about one of the strangest trends relating to food porn that I have come across in recent years. It's called the mukbang. Well, imagine if this person learned about Nikocado avocado and the whole meta narrative around his mukbangs, because that's some food porn for you. That's pure cinema. A growing number of South Koreans are using their mobile phones and laptops to watch each other consuming and talking about eating food online. Millions of viewers engage on this voyeuristic habit, which first appeared back in 2011. Every day, people engage with this every day. Interestingly, the porn stars or broadcast jockeys, he calls them BJs, as they prefer to be known, are not top chefs. Why would he even think that any of these people would want to be known as porn stars? First of all, it's called a mukbang. Oh, it translates. Mukbang apparently translates to food porn. Okay, well, that makes sense. Why would they want to be known as porn stars? Okay. Broadcast jockeys, BJs. Uh, these are not top chefs. These are not TV personalities. These are not restaurateurs, but rather just regular, albeit generally photogenic, online eaters. And then he shows a picture of a photogenic online eater, as he calls them. Yeah. Photogenic online eater, Korean lady. Mukbang roughly translates to food porn, is a live streaming of people eating food that started in South Korea in 2011 and now attracts millions of viewers. One can think of this as yet another example of food in motion. It's just that the person interacting with the food happens to be more visible than many cases than in many examples of dynamic food and advertising in the West, where all you see is the food moving. Think of those Mark and Spence's ads. I also get the sense, though, that some of the food, some of those who, for who, gosh, some of these books are written too conversationally. This is such a conversationally written book, and a lot of the like deviations. You start a sentence and then you go to another part of the sentence and then you have a different clause that references the past. It gets complicated because that's how I talk normally. That's how I'm talking now. But I can't follow it when I'm reading it. Maybe I can't follow it while I'm talking if I I'm going to start the reading again. I get the sense, though, that some of those who, for whatever reason, often end up eating alone are tuning in for a dose of mukbang at mealtimes to get some virtual company. Also see the social dining chapter. Huh. Now, I've never actually, I don't know if I've ever watched a mukbang before. I've definitely never liked a mukbang, or I've never like watched and enjoyed and remembered. I'm not a mukbang enjoyer. I also have never really looked at any food porn or like I've not gone to Reddit, for example, for food photography. I'm realizing that I much prefer the word food photography than food porn. But yeah, but whatever. Now with this, I have streams of myself drinking tea where I drink tea on stream myself. Would that be considered a form of food in motion? Is this a subsection of mukbang? Have I been secretly a mukbanger this whole time? I guess I've seen many people drink tea, and I have enjoyed that very much. I do enjoy watching people drink tea and talk about tea. Does that count? Do I need to rethink my entire identity as a person? It would be interesting to see whether those who eat while tuning in to one of these increasingly popular BJs, also called broadcast jockeys, and he just means that these are streamers. Streamers is the word that he wants to use here. That makes the most sense. These are people who are streaming themselves eating food. It would be interesting to see whether those who eat while tuning into one of these increasingly popular streamers ends up consuming more than they would were they really were they really eating alone. Consuming more than they would were they really eating alone. Consuming more than they would were they eating. If they were eating alone. Too conversational again. Too conversational. I kind of like it. It's just hard to read. So earlier in the book, there was mention. Was it earlier in the book? I don't know if I read this earlier in the book or if I just heard him talk about it. I've heard him talk on podcasts and such. The author Charles Spence. I heard him talk in podcasts. Um, People who dine with others would eat, presumably, if you had food yourself. I'm doing the parenthetical thing that he does in this book that I said I don't like. That makes it difficult to follow the conversation. People who eat alone will eat some certain amount of food. People who eat with one other person will eat 25% more, which is a lot more. And people who eat with two other people, guests, so three people together, will eat 30 something percent more. By yourself, with one person, with a lot of other people, with two other people. And I think it goes back down when there are more than three people. I don't know. Let me see if this is in my notes. Nope. So I must have, I'm sure I've heard this on a podcast. Haven't read it yet. I'll read it when I get to the social dining chapter, I'm sure. So the thought, the question, the what he's wondering is, are there similar effects? Why is he just wondering? Why doesn't he just find out? He's just wondering this. There's a lot of things that he could find out. There's a lot of things in this book. He's just wondering this. One person, you eat with a friend, you eat 25% more or something like that. Now, if you're one person and you're watching a mukbang, do you eat 25% more food? I wonder if it matters if you're eating the same food or if you're eating different food. You know, if somebody's watching me drink tea and they're just eating a steak, why would that have any? I mean, would it? Why would it? Why wouldn't it? If somebody's drinking tea and they're drinking tea and they're watching me drink tea, does that make them drink more tea? If somebody's drinking tea and they're listening to me struggle to read a book about gastrophysics, would that make them drink more? I don't know. It would be interesting to see that, apparently. Interesting to him, at least. One might also wonder if mukbang is as distracting as regular television, which has been shown to dramatically increase the amount of food consumed. Oh, well, then you've already got that. Okay. Mukbang increase. See? Not sure. But TV increases food consumption. Uh, Watching TV while eating. I wrote in my notes TV increases food consumption, but I didn't specify until just now that watching TV while eating increases food consumption. It'd be very interesting if just TV existing in the world increased food consumption. Or having a TV in your room, or having a TV turned on in a different room with no sound. Just the looming fact of TVs. Okay. Uh, so apparently TV is distracting, which makes people increase the amount of food that they're eating. If so, one might expect not only that the viewer's immediate intake of food will increase, but also the amount of time that passes before they get hungry again ought to be reduced. Again, he just said one might ought expect. Might ought expect. Might ought. Did he say that? One. He used some combination of those words. I couldn't find it. Um, but he didn't specify. Does TV make people less hungry over time? It's a question I'm asking myself in these notes. With mukbang, viewers can imagine themselves as having a meal with whoever they see on the screen. However, research shows that food imagery is most visually appealing when the viewer's brain finds it easy to simulate the act of eating, when the food is seen from a first-person perspective. Oh, this is rated more highly than viewing foods from a third-person view, typically in the case of mukbang. Now, I wonder how easy it would be for myself. So just my own notes here. Could I stream a first-person perspective of me drinking tea, or could I switch between? You know, there are glasses and things that you can stream, but I don't know if it's easy to stream and set them up to stream on OBS, which is the technology I'm using to stream. And then I could like switch between the cameras and the, whatever. I don't know. I don't have that type of ability immediately, but perhaps I could. This is rated more highly than viewing food from a third person perspective. Marketers, at least the smart marketers, Know only too well that we will rate what we see in food advertising more highly if it is easier for our brains to mentally stimulate the act of eating that we see. So, for example, imagine a packet of soup. A bowl of soup is shown in the front of the packaging. Adding a spoon approaching this bowl from the right will cause people will result in people being around 15% more willing to purchase the product than if the spoon approaches from the left. Why so? Because the majority of us are right-handed, and so we normally see ourselves holding a spoon from our right hand. Simply showing what looks like a right-handed person's spoon approaching the soup makes it easier for our brains to imagine eating. Now, for all those lefties out there saying, what about me? What about me? Inclusiveness in food photography. It may not be too long before the food ads on your mobile devices might show a reversed image to show the left-handed perspective. This idea is that the idea is that this will help maximize the advert's appeal to you, assuming that your technology can figure out your handedness implicitly. Yeah, all right. This is like the inclusiveness. We have Microsoft principles of fairness in AI, and some of them include inclusiveness. One of them is inclusiveness, just one of the things of Microsoft ethics of AI. So the advertising, this is me speculating, the advertising will be able to generate images based on your preferences. And in this case, it could generate an image that would show right-handedness or left-handedness based on whether you are left or right-handed. Or maybe show somebody feeding you if you prefer people feeding you. Actually, I don't know if that would be effective, but you get the picture showing the colors that you might like or that might stimulate you in particular. So I like the idea of having AI-driven A/B testing per user. This is the future of advertising. Maybe. Perhaps you wouldn't start per user, though. You might start per demographic. You find some random demographic that you want to approach, or a psychographic, or location. I don't know if that's included in demographic, but whatever. You start doing A/B testing for each separate individual demographic, psychographic, these types of things. And then future past that, you go more specific to individuals, in which you craft the perfect ad for an individual person. And then eventually these ads will be much better integrated into the media that you watch or consume, if you do consume any media. Like if we're watching this, we're watching a stream, this stream right here. Wouldn't it be cool or horrifying? You know, cool or horrifying, wouldn't it be cool or horrifying if this could be cut, the stream that is happening now would be cut, and then an ad would be generated, but it'd be of the same, it'd be of me in the same space, and it seems like a continuation of the content that were previously happening, and then it just seamlessly became an ad for whatever you'd want an ad for. The White Bull restaurant in Decatur. It's just a restaurant I went to recently. It's a nice restaurant. I figured I didn't want to give ads to random things I don't like. A White Bull ad in Decatur. Wouldn't you like the pasta from White Bull? And I like go off screen and grab pasta, and it's like in motion, and then we just talk about it for like a minute, and then I put it back, and then it comes back to the stream as it were, seamlessly again, transitioning back to the content. And then advertisers would presumably be able to do that at any point in the stream for any video or any stream, because the AI technology can just figure out, where in the stream it needs to add the thing, and then it can easily incorporate and create a advertising that would be seamless in terms of the content and narrative. And then it would inject that thing precisely at the moment that you would be most highly influenced by an ad. And the ad is catered towards you specifically. To that one person who is hungry currently and lives in Decatur, is able to go to the White Bull and likes pasta. That was the end of that chapter. Was that the end of that chapter? Appeal to you. Yeah, that was the end of that chapter. Uh, yeah. Uh, Marketing. That is appealing to a specific individual is on there. He said left-handedness or handiness. Is that a demographic? Is that a psychographic? Is that something else? I don't know. Based on their handedness. 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 I feel like I spelled that incorrectly. I'll figure it out. All right. That's enough reading for today. Is that enough reading for today? Let me see how long the next chapter is. Next subchapter is, rather. We're still in the same chapter. How worried should I be about food porn? It's 2 pages. It's just 2 pages. All these subchapters are very short. It's giving me the desire to read more, but it's time to not read more. Well, let's continue the mukbang portion of the stream, which is just me drinking tea, and be done with it. I will, in future, be reading more on stream. I won't be reading more, well, I will be reading more of this book, but I won't read it precisely where I ended it because I'm probably just going to read it off stream also and write notes. I just want to write notes about these types of things in order to, of course, serve my tea, drink tea. This is a tea stream. I like to drink tea. And I want to improve the taste of the tea and the whole experience of this tea thing that I do here. So, learning about the color of plates affecting the sweetness of beverages seems to be pretty important for me to affecting the experience of tea and improving my own experience of tea. You'd be crazy if you didn't care about this. That's what the book said. Why is he insulting everybody? He's insulting everybody. Anyway, I care about it. I do care about it. I'd like to learn about the different orientation that I could place my things. Currently I have a rectangular placemat that you can see here. Is that making my tea less sweet? Is it making it more bitter just because of the squareness? Be interesting to test. So anyway, because of that, I'm interested in that. I will be reading more, and I will be reading more and taking notes, and I'm gonna do some of that on stream. So you can expect that. And then maybe some of these things that I learn will trickle down to me in serving my tea to my friends or myself, and also perhaps to how that reflects on to this stream. It's possible. Tea is very nice. Again, it's still got that. It's just very medicinal type, licorice type, cherry type, but not like it's like a wild dark cherry, but also like cherry flavored medicine. A mix. And there's like a tropical fruit kind of flavor that I'm getting in the aftertaste. The sinuses seem to be quite well stimulated from this. It feels good. I just feel pleasant in general. Um, that could be from the tea, could be from talking a lot. I like talking. I like reading also, especially. There was a time where I was reading, when I started drinking tea, early in my tea drinking history, I started getting caffeine headaches, and I thought it was a problem. I didn't like the feeling of having caffeine headaches. I never had a caffeine habit before drinking tea. And then I thought it was an issue, so I wanted to do certain things to make sure that I didn't have any caffeine headaches ever again. I didn't actually. I don't know if I never. No, I still get very occasionally. I will get caffeine headaches, and then I'll just drink a lot less tea. Uh, maybe 2 times a year, something like that. Very rarely. Anyway, at that point in time, early in the tea career, 6 or 7 years ago, I don't know how long ago it was. I was getting caffeine headaches. In order to get rid of the caffeine headaches, I would drink tea very early in the morning. And in order to make sure that I could drink tea early in the morning before going to work, I went to sleep very early. So I started sleeping really early. And then I started trying to figure out how to sleep early because it was just hard to just start sleeping early. Didn't know how to do that. So I learned some different techniques to how to sleep early. And one of those techniques was to stop watching TV before going to bed, stop watching YouTube before going to bed, stop watching, in particular, I used to watch some political YouTube debates, very like, very like aggressive, snappy YouTube debates. Stop doing that and read some books. That was the idea. Read some books. So I started reading some books. Um, I especially started reading books that were not stimulating to me, essentially books of things that I didn't care about. Bought some books about colors, which was just like a list of colors. It was a very strange book. It's called The Index of Color. I don't know what it's called. I got another book about woodworking. It just lists different types of wood with their scientific name, with their common name, the region that they're in, uh, the types of irritations you might get if you're allergic to it and you start sawing it, whether or not it is susceptible to different types of, what do you call that? I don't know. Whether it degrades easily based on humidity in your particular storage location, if you can use a electric saw or not, these types of things. It's a woodworking book. It's like a technical woodworking book, and I just read it from cover to cover. Anyway, during this period of reading these technical books on woodworking and colors, and I had a book on trees. Just talked about different trees and like the bark and the thickness of the bark of each tree, and then whether it had leaves that were 3 leaves or 4 leaves or two or whatever, whether the stems broke off from the branch directly or off of the, anyway, it's a book that was not interesting, but became interesting because I read it so much. Anyway, I was reading these books, and at some point I listened to a podcast from John Vervaeke, and John Vervaeke talked about, I think it's called Lexica Divinia. I was talking about this recently to a friend, and I don't remember, I still don't know the name of the thing. Anyway, Lexica Divinia, maybe something that Catholic people do where they pray by reading the Bible aloud, and reading it aloud is a form of meditation because they're reading it aloud and they're paying attention to the vibrations in their body, and they're paying attention to what they hear, like the resonance. If you're reading this at a church, for example, you can hear the reverberation in the room, and you can also hear the reverberation in a room when you're in a smaller room, and they're different, and they have that affects you differently. There's a completely different sensation if you're paying attention to that type of thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and since I was reading every night anyway, reading every night for about an hour before going to bed, reading about subjects that I didn't care about if I remembered it. This was very helpful. I didn't take any notes. I didn't care if I remembered it. Didn't care if I read the same thing over and over. Just reading in order to sleep better. Low stimulation activity. I started reading and I started reading them aloud. And it was just a very pleasant experience. I did that for a long time and I enjoyed it very much. And I started to read aloud and I started to pay attention to the vibrations in the body as I'm reading. What part of the body is vibrating as I'm reading. I started listening to the reflections from the walls as I'm reading, and so on. And then I essentially created this mental association with reading feeling very pleasant. And now when I read, I feel very pleasant. All that to say is that I'm feeling pleasant now, and I have been reading. Of course, I've been drinking tea. I have a very strong mental association with drinking tea. The reading is associated with the drinking tea together anyway. This tea's got some longevity. It's got some patience. It's got lots of flavor. It's got lots of that feel. It's got like a honey feeling, honey taste to it. And there's another thing that I want to add to the flavor. There's a cooling, mm, I don't know the name of it. I believe it starts with the G. I believe it's like I'm getting an amber colored thing that starts with the letter G. Don't know what it is. Anyway, it's got some kind of cooling feeling. It's really pleasant. So that's the end of the stream today. I'll be reading more, and then I will post my notes on YouTube. Somewhere else maybe too. I don't know. Y'all have fun today. Enjoy. Figure out if you can see things and if the sight changes the taste. Take it easy.